Hey folks, it's 10:05 on June 11th. And this is the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission. This is our bi-weekly touch base meeting. I don't know that we have a real good name for this. We gather and we chat amongst ourselves. We bring each other up to speed on what we're doing. We throw things out for the good of the cause, all those sorts of things. We don't have an agenda. We don't take public comment. We just talk amongst ourselves. And for those of you that don't have anything better to do, we invite you to listen in and zoom in and listen to us chat amongst ourselves. With that, I note that we do have a quorum. I see, and we're informal on Fridays. I see Priya, and I see John, and I see Bill, I see Karen, I see Angela. I think that Sean Hackett is actually out of the office and not susceptible to receiving cell coverage, which is a great thing, and we should all do that every now and then. So he's excused. I see we have some folks joining us from our stakeholders, which is great. I'll just throw a few things out there for the good of the cause, and then we can go around the room and see what else people want to talk about. I know that at our last meeting, we entertained a motion to take up the KPK enforcement matter in the month of July. I've been contacted by the enforcement officer, and I think we now will be seeing an order that after a lot of discussion with commissioners individually, we've settled on July 19th to the 21st for a 3-day hearing. So mark calendars for that, commissioners and folks that are listening in. One thing that I would encourage is the enforcement officer, I think, is going to present a case management order yet today. I would encourage, I think most things have been filed in that matter. I do believe there's a dispositive motion deadline, and I'd like to make sure that that happens in a timely manner so that dispositive motions and then responses thereto are filed in a timely manner to allow commissioners and staff and parties to be able to read through everything. So Hearing Officer Peskin, if you're listening, those are my thoughts on that. And then to staff, I still I know that everything is filed within the e-filing system. I would request, if it's okay, to get all the documents that are filed, once they're all filed, downloaded to a zip drive and then emailed to or mailed to commissioners. Or if you want to use Dropbox, that's something that I did in my former career. It's a good way of moving PDF documents that are large. But I guess I'm daylighting how I plan on doing this, but I'm going to have one computer or an iPad or something that has all the documents on it, so that I can easily move through them. And then I'll have another computer for the Zoom if we're doing that. But so at some point, I guess what I'm muddling around to say is if you could get me PDFs of all the documents, that would really be helpful. I'm looking around at other commissioners. Are you nodding heads up and down that you maybe would like PDFs as well? Okay.
Is there a problem with just using the Google Drive in the commissioner portfolio? Are the files too big, or?
Mimi, I'm looking to you to see if Google Drive is something, because that does work too. I mean, that's what historically what we've done.
Yeah. Sorry, want to make sure we are muted. Yes, we could certainly do that. It is duplicative of the e-filing system. And we'd be happy to just download everything onto a flash drive and get those to commissioners. Certainly, if we use the Google Drive, it's a little more labor intensive because we have to download everything from the e-filing system, save it, and then upload it into Google Drive when everything's just in the e-filing system. But if we just download everything from the e-filing system straight onto a flash drive, we can do that. That would at least save one step from the Google Drive.
Yeah, and that works for me as well. When Jeff was saying that he wanted stuff mailed to him, I was picturing floppy disks.
Yeah, so Mimi, if you could look into either a Dropbox solution or 5 USB drives emailed or mailed to us, I think that would be great. And I think we probably should have further discussion amongst ourselves as we morph into commission that is doing more of these kinds of hearings sort of thing. How do we want to make sure that we're successful with regard to documents? And we're about to roll into the financial assurances rulemaking. That's going to be document intensive. I know that the thought is to use e-filing on that as well. Again, it's none of our faults and it's not staff's fault, but the e-filing is not user friendly. And so I'm trying to figure out how to best move us into a situation where we are able to be, well informed and have everything enforced. I mean, I just as an example, guys, and I hate to always roll back to my being a lawyer in the past, but when I was a lawyer in the past, judges that listened to cases got hard copies of every document. So I'm not saying we need to go there, but I'm just saying that's how the judges in the federal judicial circuit and the state court system did their jobs. We're acting like judges. I'm going to be comfortable, I think, if I can get PDFs of everything on my computer. So anyway.
It might make things, and I don't know if we can do this, Mimi, everything has that same docket number. And so, for example, sometimes when we're looking at NOAVs or whatever, I can look at that docket number and I feel like all the documents related to it are in one place. But like for the last time we did the educational docket for financial assurance, it was scattered everywhere. So you would look up that docket number and then there would be files, submittals scattered in between other documents, even though they had the same hearing number, I think. It would be really great if we could just have the one docket number and then everything that everyone turned in would be in one place instead of scattered throughout the e-file. And I don't know if that's actually possible for us to do, but that would be an easier way for people to all find it. And it's all that within one line of the e-file instead of many, many lines.
I mean, I had that same problem with Karen when we were going through the financial assurance informational docket. And I think that may have been a product, and I'll let Mimi chime in here, but that may have been a product of them all being submitted on a similar date. Whereas with the filings that we've had for other matters before us in the consent agenda that I've used through the e-filings system, and I anticipate for this matter coming up in July, is that if you sort by date, you're going to get everything in pretty well chronological order and connected. I haven't tested that yet, but that is a suspicion. So I'll let Mimi chime in and tell me I'm wrong in that regard.
No, actually you are right. And that the informational docket was a good learning tool for us. I know it was painful for many, but we learned a lot of lessons as to how to set up an informational docket and how best to coordinate receipt of filings. So I can assure you in the KPK matter and in all other dockets, we will not have the same issues as it relates to, Bill and Karen, what you're noting here. And additionally, we've been working with our developer to allow us to have the document titles better named. So we should be able to debut that and have that ready for the KPK matter. And so what might be useful is to go ahead and do maybe during one of our work sessions before the KPK matter, just kind of walk through the docket with the commissioners, and folks from the outside can see the improvements that have been made to the e-filing system and just to the organization. And we can just walk through that. But of course, we will go ahead and get the download all the documents onto a flash drive and get those to you as well. So you have that.
Thanks, Mimi.
Yeah, thanks, Mimi.
Very much.
Okay, so that covers KPK and July 19th to 21 and covers some background on that. I have a couple of other things that are in no particular order, but I'll just keep spouting on, and then we can look around to others. Next Wednesday, we have our evening hearing, which is June 16th. And I have had some quick discussions with commissioners. It looks like perhaps 2 of us are going to be on vacation, which is perfectly fine. We will still have a quorum and we'll be able to conduct our business. And so I just alert the rest of us that it will not be all of us at that meeting. I think we need to just sort of acknowledge that, especially during the months of the summer, we're all going to be busy dealing with our families and vacations and other things. I know that we are trying to keep each other apprised of that. Again, we just need to have 3 of the voting commissioners available for a quorum, and we would continue to have Commissioner Bogue and Commissioner Hackett as well. So, and I also remind each of us and also sort of inform our stakeholders that we YouTube video all of our meetings, and I know that most of the all of the commissioners that are in attendance generally catch back up if they are not able to make a meeting. So just alert that for the good of the cause. Back to sort of the KPK matter and also sort of meetings in general. My understanding is that we are likely getting to a point where it's okay to come back to office and to come back to office without masks, provided you're comfortable with that. We are not allowed to ask each other if we've gotten vaccinated, but we can inform each other. I've been vaccinated, so I plan on, for the KPK matter, coming to the office and being there. And I look to fellow commissioners, you know, in terms of what about other folks coming in too and being in office, and what are our thoughts about that? I think, you know, and I'm just throwing this out there, but, you know, I think if commissioners wanted to be at our big conference room, we can still have the plexiglass, you know, stuff up and be there and run a meeting that way. And then perhaps we could have, you know, our hearings manager there, and then even perhaps we could have, you know, one party at a time, socially distanced and, you know, presenting information and evidence. I would be comfortable with that. This is a weird discussion because I don't want to put anybody in a strange place, but I don't know how to otherwise do this other than just sort of pitch it out there. What do you guys think? And then the other piece on that front is, I know we've been jonesing to kind of get back into having some meetings around the state, and you know, we've also had some industry has suggested they would like to take us to a rig and sort of see things that are happening on the ground. I think we're getting to that spot, guys. And so I just sort of throw all that out there for the good of the cause and try to get some sense from the rest of you about, you know, how you might want to see us undertake the next iteration of how we're doing it. The last thing I'll say, and then I'm going to shut up, is I do think that we should continue to have the Zoom format available for our stakeholders. And so even if we're going into a hybrid mode where we perhaps are showing up, I think Zooming the meeting and having folks being able to attend that way is a really good idea. I think we've learned a lot of lessons from that. So I open it up to the rest of you to debate on this topic.
Yeah, Jeff, I was wondering the same about the KPK matter, if we might be in person. I'm comfortable with that, and also comfortable with having, you know, parties come in if they are able to, but also allowing that Zoom option. I will just say, so yesterday I participated in the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission meeting, and they did a hybrid version where some people were remote, and I was one of the remote people. And then of course the rest of the commissioners were around the table. It was very hard to hear individual commissioners when they were asking questions, and multiple other people who were virtual had the same difficulty. And so I think as long as we really test it well beforehand, especially with the mics and et cetera, or if we can have, I think if we could even have, you know, we each have our own screen in front of us, so that even if the mic is somewhere else, or if we have our own mic right here, you know, you have the benefit of seeing the person's face and kind of maybe being able to lip read a little bit to, you know, better decipher the sound, or if we could have our own, mics and cameras in front of us the way we kind of are doing right now, except in the same room. And we would just have to be careful with, making sure that we're muted in between talking so that we're not getting feedback. Anyway, that would be my suggestion, just to make it a little bit easier to sort of discern who's asking a question and who's speaking and what they're saying, and that kind of thing.
And Jeff, I can jump in here real quick. I know Scott and Chris Eisinger have been working on a revamp of our audio and video equipment for commission hearings. And so that will be ready to deploy when we let them know that we're going to be in the office ready for that. So Priya, hopefully we would be able to avoid that and have a really effective audio and video feed for the public.
Mimi, it might be helpful to do a mock session ahead of time.
Oh, definitely. Yes. Yeah.
So that we can, all
Yeah.
get our feet wet in terms of how to make sure that, I know if we're all in the same room, we all have our mics on, then there's tremendous feedback. And so that doesn't work, but I'm sure that Scott and OIT folks are figuring out how to adjust that.
They are. Yes.
Do we know how many representatives from the parties, as well as how many witnesses are planning on being a part of the hearing with KPK on the 19th?
The witness lists have not yet been filed. I'll check with the hearing officer to see when the deadline is for the witness lists. Certainly, there would be at least one representative counsel to each party. I just don't know how many other than that would be there.
Sure. Yeah, I just kind of think about just making sure that it's smooth running for all the parties who are participating. Having an opportunity to be heard and to really not have to face any kind of clunkiness with the hybrid approach. So if there's any way to have them all in there, and there's room to space everyone out, I think that'd be an appropriate way of doing it. To Jeff's point, I think the Zoom has worked tremendous since we all started this gig almost a year ago, and I've been very impressed with that. And I think it creates an accessibility that just didn't exist prior to to all of us having to be in person at the Chancery building. So I'm a proponent of the hybrid approach, and I'm a proponent of seeing faces and going through a proceeding. As important as the KPK one is, in person, getting a chance to maybe be a little more interactive that maybe Zoom doesn't allow us to do. So my vote is yes. I'd love to get in a room to hear the KPK stuff and to hear the KPK hearing and see if that could be a model for how we approach things going forward.
So
I'm a little concerned that that I'm going to have to start wearing pants again. So so that's a little disappointing. But besides that, I do think it's important to take Priya's suggestion to heart, though, because I've participated in a number of different meetings now. Some of them have been a hybrid. And this idea of having a camera that sits up above the meeting ultimately is pretty problematic, because audio sometimes is a challenge. And even if audio is fine, you can't tell who's talking because the camera is usually far enough away that it's really hard to see what's going on in the room, and difficult to see people's expressions and kind of what's going on. And so I'm sure there's a way that we can both have our individual pictures on the Zoom screen and still utilize the in-house audio when we're doing in-person meetings. I'm not exactly sure how that would happen, but I have been in meetings where they've done that and it's worked quite well. So that's my thoughts on it.
Well, we did, our kind of kickoff intro meeting when we all got together that first time, sometime in July last year. I think we all had our laptops, kind of on the desk, and I remember, being logged in through my own Zoom. We were all in the room, kind of speaking that way. Now, I never went back to look at the video to see kind of how that sounded or how it looked, but I'd be curious, if that worked. I have no problem, having my laptop, having my iPad, even though I have my notes available to me, I can still set that up and still speak to the parties, kind of as you see now, over my over my screen, over my camera, and speak to the other commissioners. So if that worked and if that sounded good, I'd like to kind of run a test that way, where we're kind of doing our own individual Zooms, but all in the same room together, and seeing if that could be a way of, everyone gets to see our faces, gets to, see who's speaking, and gets to hear things hopefully clearly and thoroughly. So just a thought in that regard. I don't know, maybe if that's something that your hearings team could do, just make sure that what we did back last July, I don't recall the date, that was, an efficient way of doing it. Might be a good kickoff point for trying something new this time.
Definitely. We can do that.
Okay. Any more feedback on moving into sort of a hybrid approach on meetings? And so we'll try to find a time that we can get together ahead of the July 19th meeting to sort of test that. And we can work on that. And Mimi, thanks to you and Scott and the OIT team for putting together some hopefully successful formats for us on that front. I would like to next maybe call on Director Murphy. Julie, hi. I know she's got to leave in a bit, and just wanted to give her a chance to say hi again. I know she took some time off, which was great. And if she's here, great. If not, that's fine too.
Thanks, Jeff.
Julie, do you want to give us a heads up on kind of next steps on financial assurance and or anything else that you have on your plate?
Sure, happy to. What I have on my plate is kind of digging out from being out for a few days and being out of pocket. And it was an interesting time to miss operationally, certainly. So trying to get things sorted on that front, and then also finalizing a draft of financial assurance rules that I hope will be the next step in the continuing conversation, and certainly is far from the last step. But the idea is that they will be out on June 15th, which we'll just kind of kick off the formal rulemaking process and further the conversation that we started much earlier this year. I've been listening to stakeholders, I've been listening to commissioners, I've been looking at what other states are doing and trying to think about what is a framework that we can all talk about to help improve Colorado's regulatory regime. So look for those June 15th, and I'll be looking forward to hearing feedback from stakeholders, from parties, from the public, and from commissioners as that process moves forward. And I think that's probably the sum total of my update. Hopefully next week I'll be a little bit more up to speed on how things are going, and I may have a more robust conversation at that point.
That's great. Thank you, Julie. Glad you were able to get away, and glad that you're back. And thanks for the continuing work on behalf of yourself and staff. I would just echo the point to the folks that may be listening in. We will move into the next iteration of rulemaking with regard to financial assurances. That is just the next step. And whatever is daylighted in terms of a draft set of rules is not definitive, it's not final, it's just getting us to the next step. I think that's really important, and I remind everybody that when we did mission change, we started with sort of the white paper, and then we did straw dog ideas. And I remember I heard back from all of our stakeholders, would you please just publish some rules so we can start to look at what rules might look at? We're tired of this sort of ambiguousness about ideas. And so that's really what we're doing, is we're going to be publishing some rules, and we'll all take a look at that, and then we will start into the formal process. So
Jeff,
thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Julie.
Thank you. I did forget one thing. As part of the noticing process, we wanted to have a stakeholder meeting open to the public via Zoom, of course, to walk through staff's draft set of rules on the morning of the 16th. It's a day that we normally have a commission hearing. So we thought it would be a good window of time for us to kind of go through staff's rules. We can answer questions, and of course, as questions come up later in the process, we'll work through those as well. But our idea would be to have a stakeholder meeting via Zoom the morning of June 16th, which would allow staff to walk through the draft set of rules and explain some of its thinking and about kind of the different permutations. So I was reminded I should note that as well.
Great. And obviously, I think the commissioners would love to be invited so we can listen in on that stakeholder meeting. And we should calendar that so that everybody who desires to listen in can listen in to your to staff's initial explanation of the draft rules.
Is that going to
Thanks,
be
Jeff.
recorded for those of us who are going to be out of the office?
Yep, I was just going to touch on that, Karen. I know it's a little bit of short notice for folks to rearrange calendars, so that session will be recorded. And of course, any questions that folks have that arise either after digesting the rules or after listening to it at some future date can certainly reach out to me to at least hear what my thinking is.
Good. So recorded, and people can watch it at their leisure. Okay, so we've talked about calendars, we talked about next meetings, we talked about financial assurances, we've talked about hybrid meeting. I only have one other topic for today, and it's bittersweet. Our Assistant Attorney General, Joel Minor, has accepted a phenomenal new opportunity for himself to become the Environmental Justice Program Manager at CDPAG, a newly created job that is spot on for Joel. And we are so excited for Joel as he moves into this new position. And as I said, it's also bittersweet because Joel has been a phenomenal asset to COGCC over the course of his tenure at the AAG's office, and we will sorely miss him. I would like to suggest that we do something in terms of a celebration of having Joel with us and congratulate him and moving forward sometime in the next month or so when we are all available and we can get together in person and toast a glass of something to Joel for his great work with us. So just wanted to alert everybody to that. I think maybe today's his last day. And I don't know that he's with us, but oh, there you are. Hey, Joel. Hey, we're talking about you.
Thank you, Jeff. And yeah, my last day will be next Wednesday. I will be around through the release of the financial assurance rules. And thank you for the kind words. It's been really just the highlight of my professional career to get to serve the people of Colorado with all of you. And I'm excited that I will still be continuing that service and not be too far away.
The state is blessed to have you. Thank you, Joel. Others with comments?
Jeff,
Yeah, Kyle.
thanks. I just want to chime in and say ditto. We feel the same way about having been able to work with Joel, and I won't call it losing. Joel's still going to be in the state family, but from a personal point of view, I'm very sad that I won't get to work with Joel on a daily basis any longer. But in any event, it's a great opportunity, and we're very happy for him in my office.
Yeah,
I
congrats.
mean, I agree with what everyone said. I'm a little concerned about whoever's taken your place because there's some giant shoes to fill, and so good luck to that person.
Thank you, John. No one has ever.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. No one has ever called my shoes giant before. I think it's a testimony that we are rarely in person. As you know, I'm not a very large person, but thank you. And obviously, the AG's office has a wonderful team who you've all already worked with and will continue to get to work with. So rest assured, there will be high quality counsel for you, continuing to be there in my absence. So thank you, though. I appreciate it.
Thanks for all your work, Joel. I don't know how we would have made it through mission change rulemaking without your participation and all that hard work that you put in, and the calm way that you present everything, and take these crazy concepts sometimes that we have and put them on paper and help guide us forward and say, is this what you said? I think this is what I heard you say. So thanks for being our translator and the gatherer of all thoughts and putting them into something that's coherent and cohesive, and we're going to miss you.
Yeah, Joel, the work that you've done with us has been outstanding, and I'm sure I myself and the rest of the state has every expectation that it will be outstanding in your new role as well. So congrats.
So that exhausts my list of various topics. I'm looking to fellow commissioners. Do other folks have things they want to bring to the table? Commissioner or Karen?
Yeah, I just wanted to let folks know that I've been, as it fits into my calendar, trying to listen in on the Air Quality Control Commission meetings, as well as the Air Quality Enterprise met for the first time over at CDPHE. And I think, and I know Sean's not here, so that's not very nice of me to volunteer, but I think we might want to hear from the new administrator of the Air Quality Enterprise. I think their ability to raise fees for some pretty specific issues around air quality emissions and what they might be able to fund could have some really good synergy and overlap with things that I think we've been talking about and not necessarily struggling with, but trying to figure out how we're going to get off the ground, i.e., what kinds of emissions are occurring from certain oil and gas activities, requests for better air monitoring and data from some of our stakeholders. Creating a shared database might be a possibility. And I think maybe there's a possibility for us to braid and blend our funding together on some projects, since they're going to be able to bring in some revenue. Maybe there's a way for us to partner on some projects around areas where we've been interested in getting additional data as well. And so it might, I think, benefit us to hear from them. They're just getting off the ground. My understanding is they're going to collect about $1 million their first year, and then it slowly ramps up to $5 million that they're going to collect each year from the top 150 air polluters that they regulate right now. There might be some good opportunities for our commissions to work together and put together some projects and collect data together. And in particular, I've been thinking a lot about how we're going to track emissions reductions and the responsibility that we have tracking oil and gas emissions, and how we might be able to work better together with CDPHE. So I think there's an opportunity there. And then for anyone who missed the last Air Quality Control Commission meeting, it was in the news, but they're going to adopt some rules and regulations around their reducing transportation emissions and having businesses put together plans for emissions reductions from their transportation fleets and or their employees. And that's something that I'm assuming that we as state agencies are going to be looking at too as we look forward. And I think COVID has shown, we're able to work at home and reduce emissions and not be in the office every single day. And so hopefully we're going to have a plan too as the Oil and Gas Commission and how we look at work and traveling every day into work.
Great, thank you for that, Karen. We'll definitely look to Julie and Scott in terms of how that might get implemented here at the state agency. Looking around to others with thoughts, comments, topics.
I've got a question, Jeff. I'm curious about how we as a commission, or maybe us as individual commissioners, might better connect to what is being considered at the legislature that may affect us. I've had some conversations recently that have kind of opened my eyes to some things that I was not aware of. I'm not a politically connected person. This is obviously my first time in public service. And so I'm curious if there's any resources for us as a commission to really get a handle on the things that may affect us and how we can understand that better on the front end. Maybe not be so much in a reactionary position.
Good point, Bill. And, I think maybe what we should do is schedule some time with DNR's legislative liaison, who is sort of responsible for sort of oversight of what's potentially happening with legislation. Obviously this this session's now over, so it would be prospective looking into next session. But I can certainly set up a time for us to have discussion, or individual or collective, and we could set that up. I see Angela's nodding. She's aware of this piece as well. Angela, do you have anything to add on that front?
Yeah, thank you. That was going to be exactly my suggestion. I think getting our ledge liaison, if she's available, she is due with her first child in about 2 weeks. So we'll see. But, I can always fill in and get, that information conveyed. And then CDPHE's ledge liaison as well might be beneficial to have present.
Yeah, I think that would be good, both in the near future as far as a recap of the last ledge session, but then as we go into whatever's going on in the interim, I imagine there's some interim committees that may or may not be of interest to us. And then as we roll into the next session, perhaps a monthly update on legislation that's been introduced, is going to be introduced, that may directly affect us, and that's at the state level. And then I'd also be curious to, and I don't know who this would be, but to get some updates on any kind of federal legislation that may affect us as well. And so whether that needs to be quarterly or whatever that time frame may need to be, but there's certainly some federal legislation in the pipeline at any given time that potentially directly affects what we're doing. So
Okay, let me work with staff and see if we can get something set up. I agree, John, that sort of a recap of things that happened. I mean, I try to keep up with the news, but it would be really helpful to get something that with someone that's fully in the know on this front, and then we'll maybe try to set something up where we can all listen in and be able to ask questions. Great question.
That'd be very helpful. Thanks.
John, did you have another topic? I saw you were unmuting about the same time Bill was.
well, I was going to talk about just a couple of things. One, I'll just let folks know that this week I went up and presented to the Eastern District group of CCI, Colorado Counties, Inc. And so Eastern District is most of the northeastern plains counties, and they were curious about the implementation of SB 19-181, the activity that's going on in the oil and gas world in their jurisdictions, and any potential impacts of upcoming legislation to what's going on in their communities. And ended up being a really good conversation, I think, and people over there are really interested in what's happening. And so I think that was good to keep that line of communication open. I saw Angela up there as well. She was presenting, I think, to the Western District, and you can talk about that. But it's good to have state folks up there talking to the counties. I think Jill Ryan was up there, and a few other folks. So I thought that was good. First time speaking in person in almost a year. I'm a little rusty, not chatting in Zoom meetings. So that was a little weird. But that was
Pants?
I did have to wear pants. Again, a little disappointing. That's right. I tell you what's really odd is that I'm so used to reading off of notes on the Zoom screen when I'm giving presentations now, that not having to speak off the cuff without notes. It's been a little while since I've done that. So, but anyway, and then my other, I think, question is that we're daylighting these financial assurance draft rules next week. And, there's certainly a whole bunch of people that have gone through this rulemaking process a number of times, and so are well versed in the process. But I think that there's, another sliver of stakeholders that may or may not have been involved with this process. And so hopefully we can maybe provide a little comment on Wednesday's meeting about, what draft rules are, what this process is, what's actually being done here, that this isn't the end result. This is just the very beginning of a long process in order to ultimately come to a conclusion later in the fall, but to kind of possibly just kind of front load that information to folks so that there's not any kind of misinformation or miscommunication about what the process looks like to folks who maybe have not engaged as much in the rulemaking process as others, understanding that I'm not going to be there on Wednesday, so I apologize for that.
I think that's a good point, John, and I'll make sure that I don't know if Julie's still with us, but make sure that while she takes the opportunity Wednesday morning to explain the draft, that there's also an explanation of the process, so that everybody can be aware of that. Because I think we're going to be getting a case management order out, or some form of order when we post the rules that sort of establishes deadlines. When do you file for party status, and what does that mean, and all of that. That would be helpful as we re-engage with the rulemaking.
Yeah. And I think roles and responsibilities of the different entities, including staff and commission and stakeholders, and how they can provide their input, either individually with commissioners or through the formal party stakeholder process. I think that would be good.
Yeah, and I agree. And I'm sure that you guys have been having discussions with stakeholders. I have been having discussions with stakeholders. It's totally appropriate, and I think it's very helpful to the process to have times to have one-on-ones or a group of folks coming in and chatting with me about ideas. I think it helps facilitate all the things that we're doing. So I'll make sure we do a good job of that when we do the 16th morning session.
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion. And also, if we make those comments within the stakeholder presentation, as well as maybe both our evening public comment session and maybe even the following week's regular morning hearing, just to kind of remind everybody about the processes. And the other point there that I think might be useful to make is just to John's point about this is not the final, that if you see something that you feel doesn't go far enough or has gone too far or whatever, please provide that in specific comments on this particular piece in the draft rule. We would like to see change to something different, and what that is. I think that would be helpful as well to have people be thinking about as they're submitting their public comment. Uh-oh, what did I do, Kyle? I saw you pop in.
Oh, you didn't do anything. Priya, I just want to remind for anybody who's listening, as well as the commissioners, that obviously there's a formal process for people who participate as parties to provide all of that in what I view as pretty significant detail for thoughts and opinions on how the draft rules could change and all of that. So there are multiple opportunities to provide that feedback as well throughout the entire rulemaking process.
Great.
I just had one other thing if there wasn't anything else. So as I mentioned, I participated yesterday in the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission meeting, and I gave a presentation on the wildlife series rules, as well as some of the other rule series that sort of interact with wildlife protections. I got a lot more questions than I was anticipating. Part of the reason it ended up taking longer was just because of the audio issues, as I mentioned, but they were good questions, and it sounds like people were glad to hear and see, where we landed on some of those different protections. I also mentioned the financial assurance rulemaking coming up, and there were a couple of questions related to especially orphan wells. And, so I encouraged the individual commissioners or anybody, there listening to look out for our draft rules that would be, I didn't know when exactly they were coming out, but I said sometime in the next couple of weeks, and encourage them to submit their comments as it relates to kind of thinking about the ways in which our financial assurance rules can also kind of help address wildlife protections. So that's all I had.
Great. Glad you were able to do that. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think that was really important that you did that, because in conversations with a couple of commissioners, I don't think they had any idea, what happened during the mission change process, and how big a role CPW actually is going to be playing in the application process. So I think that was good.
Yeah, thanks. And Brett Ackerman was there on site, and he was able to answer a couple of specifics, about where, how, and the details of how CPW consultation will work and that kind of thing. Yeah, I agree. It sounds like, it seemed like people were, they had an inkling of what was going to happen, but they didn't really know the details of how things came out. And I was sure to emphasize that, Colorado Parks and Wildlife has been an excellent partner throughout, and that they continue to be, and that I also kind of left them with a couple of ideas of thinking about ways we might be able to partner in the future, kind of along the lines of what Karen was saying with CDPHE. So thinking about ways that we might be able to pool funds if there are questions we want to ask related to wildlife, or if there are especially in relation to like compensatory mitigation funds that we receive. If there are projects, where there are other grant programs, could use a match source, and just ask them, to kind of keep the communications lines open and let us know if there are, questions or concerns that they're having.
Looking to see if anybody else has offerings this morning. All right, I'm not seeing anything further. Just noting for the record, we had about 10 folks join us. Thank you all for joining us this morning and listening in. We will get back to our daily business, and we will see everybody Wednesday the 16th in the morning for the financial assurances overview. And then we've got our meeting Wednesday evening. And we'll be doing that via Zoom, and we'll have public comment. I think we have a couple of consent matters, and we'll look forward to seeing everybody then. Wish everybody a great weekend. Stay safe. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.